Well, this is sixth lecture on mechanics of metal forming. As recall last lecture where the stress strain curve was explained, how it is drawn and all that. This lecture will we would be able to deliver some of the work. How would you calculate some of the problems based on the stress strain curve? Then the volume constancy equations, various metal forming processes that would be using the concept of mechanics of metal forming. Then other topics like, so if we recall the factors that affect the shape and magnitude of stress strain curve, we can classify in two major categories as the metallurgical factors and secondly the test conditions, factors that are governed by the test conditions. Like under test conditions, that like strain rate, temperature, state of the stresses, that are under the test conditions, whereas the composition of the workpiece material, the process of heat treatment that has suffered before the test on the workpiece, and some of the prior history of the plastic deformation, these are concerning the metallurgical factors. Usually these factors, if you recall the basic equations, and let us take this particular example, one example, and suppose we have a 13 mm diameter tensile specimen, round specimen, having a 50 mm gauge length. The load corresponding to the 0.2% offset is around, say, 6,800 kg, and the maximum load is around 8,400 kg, say, and let us assume that the fracture occur at 7,300 kg. The diameter after fracture, which is measured after the tensile test, is 8 mm, and the gauge length at the fracture is measured as 65 mm at the end of experiment. So let us calculate the standard properties of the material from the tensile test. So how would you proceed to solve? Let us see this one. So based on this available data, if you recall, this is the specimen. If we recall it, this is the specimen. This is the center line. This is what is the gauge length, and this is the length which is hold in the machine, and you apply a load or force in this direction, the tensile force. So one can calculate the initial cross section. This is what the initial, this region, which is the A0, can be calculated, and it can be calculated because the initial diameter is given as 13 mm. So if you calculate it, pi by 4 13 is square, that comes out to be 132.7 mm square. Similarly, because it is also given at the fracture when the diameter reduces to, so when it fractures here, this diameter, necking diameter, it reduces to, say, at the fracture one can have like this, So this is what the diameter it becomes, and then it leads to fracture here. So if this is calculated as the final cross sectional area, which is diameter is given 8, that comes out to be around 50.3 mm cube, and you can find out the engineering strain corresponding to this one, because the length is also given from 65 mm to, so 65 minus 50 divided by 50, that is around 30%, and similarly the reduction you can calculate it A0 minus AF divided by A0, that is 62%. You can find out the ultimate tensile strength, like the average load divided by the fracture area, that comes out to be 620, you can calculate it, megapascal. Similarly, you can also find out the final load by, that is the final load divided by the initial area, that comes out to be 509. Yeah, no doubt we can take the elastic modulus as 207 gigapascal, and the elastic recoverable strain at the maximum load, then one can be calculated as P average divided by the A0 and divided by the elastic, because the stress strain relationship. So that comes out to be 0.003. So if the elongation at the maximum load is uniform, that is around 22%, that comes, and then suppose if it is given, if the maximum load, the elongation is 22%, so what would be the plastic strain at the maximum load? So one can calculate it as the plastic strain would be the final strain minus the at the elastic point. So you can calculate it as evaluated 0.22 minus 0.003, and that comes out to be 0.2120. This is an example how do you calculate the experimental data tensile to calculate other things. There is another problem here. One can see the second problem, where again in a similar tensile test of a material, fracture occurred, say the fracture occur at maximum load. The condition at the fracture, say it is found as the final area as 100 mm square, and the length, the final length, once it is joined, the fractured piece is joined, it is found to be 60 mm. The initial values, say of the workpiece, this tensile workpiece, suppose it is 150 mm square, the cross sectional area, and the initial length, suppose it is 40 mm. So in that case, let us determine the true strain to the fracture, assuming that the change in both length and area occur at the necking point. So how should we proceed? Let us see here. See, we can find out the strain at the maximum load. Both area and gauge length can then be used for the strain calculation. So one can calculate it. So if we take the lengthwise, so this strain, the final strain comes out to be 0.405, and if you do it at the area wise, it comes out to be 0.405. So if a more ductile material is tested such that the necking occurs at the final gauge length, suppose it is 83 mm, and the final diameter, suppose it comes out to be 8 mm, while the initial length has been 40 mm and initial diameter, say it is 12.8 mm. So in that case, similar way we can calculate the final strain that's the true strain we are calculating, because final true strain, that would be natural log of LF by L0, and similarly on the area side or diameter side also one can calculate. So this what gives these two example again, that these things can be calculated, and it gives a guide for the metal forming processes to decide. Let us see that as in the last lecture we explained the different types of materials. Once again let us see here that in various literatures from different sources we have seen that there are around 7 different types of material that exists. So if you look at this slide, the A, which is a rigid material, perfectly rigid material. So you can see there is even at a zero strain the stress is very high, and it is almost infinite, or at zero strain you require very high stress to fracture it. Second one is a perfectly linear elastic material, where you have linear up to elastic point only, but it is perfectly linear elastic. On the other hand, the C is your rigid perfectly plastic material. The D, whereas, is the rigid with strain hardening effect, whereas the E curve shows the elastic perfectly plastic, because there is a elastic part as well as plastic part. F, it shows the elastoplastic with strain hardening. One can see the elastic part and then the plastic part, and there is a strain hardening. The last one, which is very popular, not for metal forming but viscoelastic material. Basically it is very popular to model using this material under hot condition. So these we come across this kind of material, and corresponding there are some of the popular empirical equations to capture stress. So the first one, which is very popular, which is the Ledwig equation, which is the this comes out to be in this form, where you have a curve like initially this one, and it goes like here. So this is what is the sigma 0, and this portion gives your and this sigma 0 is without strain hardening, the stress which is there without strain hardening, and then H and strain raised to the power n, which is the material, this portion. So this is another one, and the second one, which is a continuous curve approximation by two straight lines. So this is also the summation where the difference of the strain with initial strain, where capital B is the tangent modulus. One can last time I explained one, you can also find out the tangent modulus curve using the stress strain curve. So the yield strain is other part, sigma is rho, sigma is your yield strain part. Third one is the popular one, is your power law, which is very popular. If you this is what the popular, if I extend it up to here, and so this becomes your pop. This one can sorry, this starts from here, this starts from 0. So this is what your stress is equal to K, this particular power law. Fourth, OIS expression is another equation, where the fifth Swift equation is another form, where the n is the material property lying between the 0 and 1, whereas the Prager's expression is having the tangent of the true values, whereas the Ramberg's Osgood formula is also one can use. So these are some of the popular empirical equations. Let us again recall the flow stress curve, and we define the flow stress in this manner. So all these properties which we derive from the stress strain curve are going to be used generally. If we look into the different metal forming processes, we can broadly classify in three parts: cold forming, hot forming and warm forming. All these processes, forming processes, has their own advantages and disadvantages. And if you see the cold working, generally the temperature range is less than or equal to 0.3, the melting point of the temperature. And generally the strain rate sensitivity which is used in cold working is of the order of between 0 to 0.05, and friction, certainly the cold working must be very low, which is of the order of 0.1. Whereas the hot working, the temperature range is 0.5 to 0.75 of the melting point of the material, whereas the strain rate, it can be as high as 0.05 to 0.04, and the coefficient of friction, no doubt it increases, that comes into 0.4 to 0.5. The warm working is another process which exploits the plus point of the cold working and hot working, and therefore the temperature range of the warm working is 0.3 to 2.5 melting point of the material, and the strain rate is also in between the two, cold and hot, ranging from 0.5 to 0.1, and no doubt that friction will also be between the two as 0.3. If we see, the cold working is generally, as explained earlier also, it is done below recrystallization temperature of the part, and we get better property products. The costs, however, of the equipments and all that toolings are higher than the other processes, because the cold working do not require any heating process. It is the surface finish obtained is very good, the dimensional control and all that is very good enough, and it has a good reproducibility and interchangeability of the parts. Better strength, because there is a strain hardening, it will get strengthened, and directional properties are also achieved very well. As far as the contaminations, because of the scale formation and all that, it is almost absent. Disadvantage is that the higher force is required, heavier and more powerful equipments are required, less ductility is available. Metal surfaces must be clean before the work, and the strain hardening occurs, and therefore the undesirable residual stresses may be present. These are some of the disadvantages. However, if we look into the hot working, which is done above recrystallization temperature of a material, but however you require less, you require heat, but you require less heat, less force in that case, where the atoms of the metal reach a certain high energy level, the new crystals start forming, and this is called what's the recrystallization. And when this happens, the old grain structure deform earlier carried out by mechanical working no longer exists, and instead new crystals are generated which is strain free. That's the good point with. So there is no strain hardening in this process, and there is a greater ductility available with the material. Favorable grain size is obtained, leading to better mechanical properties, and certainly the equipment of lesser power can be needed, and there is no residual stresses. However, the disadvantage, on the other hand, the heat is required, which is costing, the poor surface finish is obtained, the poor accuracy is obtained, and the dimensional control of the part as well. The poor reproducibility and interchangeability of the part is there. The labor costs, labor associated, because working with an environment which is very hot, and lower life of the tooling and equipments are also some of the disadvantages. Whereas the warm working is carried out temperature which is in between the cold and hot. Therefore, these processes are having advantages like lesser load on the toolings and equipment, greater metal ductility, fewer number of annealing operations are required here. Whereas with compared to the hot working, there are certain advantages on the warm, like you require less heat energy, you require better precision of the component, you get lesser scale on the workpiece, lesser decarbonization of the part, better dimensional control, better surface finish, lesser thermal shock on the tooling, and lesser thermal fatigue to the tooling, and so greater life of the tooling one can achieve. And so the warm working is becoming nowadays more and more popular. Let us see these two popular curves, which is associated directly with cold working. You see that when the cold working, the order of the order of the cold work is concerned, what happens to the property? Certainly the formability decreases, whereas the more you cold work, the strain hardening, so the due to strain hardening, strength increases. Whereas if you take the annealing temperature, if you increase the annealing temperature, you will see the strength decreases, whereas the formability increases. So you can see the difference, and these differences are taken advantage in metal forming. So in some of the forming processes like wire drying popularly, when there is a multi-stage forming, then we require to anneal after one stage, and that's how we take advantages of these two curves. As far as the classification of various metal forming processes are concerned, we call it the process bulk forming or massive forming on the basis of the order of deformation we have, because these processes like forging, rolling, extrusion and drying will require very heavy load, and that's how the name has come as the massive. You can see the forming has again variety of forming processes. We would see the details of this in subsequent lectures. So the forging can be a closed die forging with flash, closed die forging without flash, coining, electro upsetting, forward extrusion, forging, backward extrusion, forging, hobbing operation, isothermal forging, nosing, open die forging, rotatory or orbital forging, precision forging, metal powder forging, radial forging, upsetting. All these things are different processes that we would be dealing one by one subsequently. On the other hand, rolling is very popular and old process where the two rolls are used. So like the different processes under this head comes as seat rolling, shape rolling, tube rolling, ring rolling, rotatory tube piercing, gear rolling, then roll forging, then cross rolling, surface rolling, seat forming, tube reducing, etc. Extrusion is another very popular area where if it is hot extrusion, we do not require any lubricant, and like forward extrusion, backward extrusion, hydrostatic extrusion, all these things are varieties of the extrusion. Drying, where the two categories, when you have a drying with rolls, that is ironing, tube sinking, so, and wire drying is another area where, and then the cupping operation. Drying has another where the cups are formed. So seat forming generally, when you draw tubes and wires, that is another area. One important issue was left in the tensile test. Tensile test is very popular, and let us see the instability problem in tension. So instability problem, we have seen that an increase in the stress due to reduced cross section area at the what is the reason of instability? That is an increase in the stress due to reduced cross sectional area. When it becomes greater than the increase in load carrying capability due to the strain hardening, then the material becomes unstable and neck starts, and there is subsequently fracture. So one can recall this again figure, the stress strain curve, where at the fracture the true stress strain curve, and on the other hand the other one is also shown it as the engineering stress strain curve. One can see here that if you draw this stress strain curve on log plot, it comes out to be a straight line. One can see here where is the n becomes the slope a by b. So the true stress as evaluated P by A0 plus the conventional strain. So the true stress is evaluated as P by A0 plus conventional strain if it is, whereas the true strain can be calculated as the natural log of the 1 plus engineering strain, and it can also be calculated. This equation is well known to us, and one can also define the true uniform strain, that is U, at maximum load as natural log of 1 plus engineering uniform strain, and the flow curve for the ductile material, which uniform plastic deformation, it has also already been seen the K strain to the power n, and then one can find out the log of these two from the log this log plot on, and one can find out this popular equation where the d sigma by d strain becomes n multiplied by sigma divided by strain. This popular equation is important, and this gives rise to a phenomenon which is called as instability, so which leads to localized deformation. And if you look into this curve, because generally it happens at the fracture point where the necking starts, where the delta change at that point when the necking has been there, that at the maximum fracture point the load, there is no change in, that means dP is 0. So P, if you take the true stress and multiplied by area, so you can calculate the dP as sigma dA plus d sigma A, which is 0 at the maximum load. So by volume constancy equation, the volume remains constant during the process. So dL by L you can calculate it, and therefore this can be just substituted and one can find out the minus dA by A as d sigma by sigma. That is at the point of tensile instability. It is shown in the graphically here. You can see this. If you extend at the point P back, and it on the other side, on the negative side of the strain, it comes out the offset as 1. And if the engineering strain is used, so one can find out this popular equation, d sigma by d strain, which can be again simplified and manipulated to get it is equal to that value, which is equal to sigma at that point. So one can, when the necking, so there is a necking criteria. So what is the necking criteria? That equation number 3 gives the necking criteria as d sigma by d rho, and is equal to sigma by 1 plus E. That's called as the necking criteria. And let us see this curve, which is called as the Considers curve, and one can construct the Considers curve for determining the point of maximum load. So what happens at the maximum load point C? If you take the tangent, it will cut at point A, and from 0 point, if that becomes 1, because on the strain part, so 1 plus, and wherever it cuts to the stress point, that will give you the strength, the ultimate strength. That's what's the, and then by substituting in the necking criteria earlier, simple relationship for necking true uniform strain can be found out, which is equal to N. This is an important property to find the stretchability of seat, a particular, basically when the seat material is tested under test, this becomes a very popular equation where the width is greater than the thickness. So for any seat material, this criteria is uniform strain becomes N. However, in case of sheet metal, there are two types of tensile flow instability. As in case of circular piece, it is only one, but when the width of the material is greater than the thickness like sheet, we have two flow instability. One is called as the diffuse necking, similar to the tensile test, and is followed by the second necking, which is called as the localized necking under the state of plane strain deformation. And in case of diffuse necking, as that provides a large extent of necking on the tensile specimen, similar to necking from a cylindrical specimen like. Diffuse necking might terminate in fracture, but normally followed by a localized necking. So in localized necking, what happens? The necking is a narrow band with its size approximately specimen thickness, and which is inclined at an angle of around 55 degree, and it do not give change in width, though the localized neck plane strain deformation happens in case of localized. So under this necking, as if you look at this figure here, this figure, under this necking, the decrease in specimen area with increase in strain because of the softening is restricted to the thickness direction only, that is dA becomes your width multiplied by the change in thickness dt, where W is your constant length of the localized neck, and T is the thickness of the neck, one can see here. So one can see the upper one is the localized one, and this is the diffuse neck. If you manipulate at this point, one can find out that these equations will result into minus sigma dt by d strain, and let the direction of the axial strain be 1 and 2, like you are using the seat, then the volume constancy will result into d sigma 2 is equal to d sigma 3, and that would be d sigma 2 by 2, and third strain would be dt by t. So substituting this in the above equation, the increase in load carrying ability due to the strain hardening, one can calculate it, which is dp1, that is for the direction 1, and corresponding is strain increment divided by A, that comes out to be sigma by 2. And then one can again see it here that using these equations, and if you substitute further, we find out again the instability form, which is sigma by 2. And for the power law curve, if you use the power law curve, it comes out to be is equal to 2n. So if you further resolve it at the point at a distance L along the specimen and having area A, and so one can calculate in this way, where the when your stress is function of strain and strain rate, in that case one can calculate the dp by dl, that is the on the curve, which is to be 0 if you take a length here. So one can manipulate this one in this form, two differential form addition and this one. So and then if you apply the volume constancy, that the true strain, then one can calculate as here, and see the equation number 15, 16, 17, 18 and then 19. This is what the strain rate, because the strain rate from the definition of strain divided by delta t, which is t if it is taken as time, so this can further be divided into dA by the change in cross sectional area, and that comes out to the rate of change of cross sectional area to the original area. And so with length along at a point at a distance L from the specimen, one can find out this relationship. This relationship gives two very important quantity, which is called as the material quantity, which is very important for necking process. So number one, which is a dimensional strain hardening coefficient, we call as zeta 1 by sigma deva d sigma by d deva strain, and second one is called as the strain rate sensitivity, which is defined in this fashion. This strain rate sensitivity, which is it's a very popular form including strain rate, stress, and if we plug these two equations in the earlier equation number 15, the value of m and v, this equation if you plug into, and if you further find it out in this fashion, therefore one can find out this popular equation, which is m plus zeta minus 1 by m. This is what the rate of change of area with length at the necking point, that the deformation becomes very unstable when the smallest cross sectional area of the work shrinks faster than the rest, and therefore dA prime by dA is greater than 0. So the deformation will be uniform and stable so long as this dA prime by dA is less than 0, since A prime by A, this is negative in tension, and for stable deformation therefore it should be greater than or equal to 0. That is dA prime by dA, it should be greater than equal to 0. That gives m plus v plus 1 to 0, and that gives as your zeta plus m, it's not v, it's a zeta plus m is greater than or equal to 1. This above equation shows both strain and strain hardening and strain rate into picture. So hardening contributes to suppressing the onset of necking at the room temperature. When m is 0, the instability criteria reduces to zeta, which is equal to or greater than 0, or in the other form 1 by sigma d sigma by d strain, which is greater than equal to, which gives the familiar necking criteria as this one, which was shown earlier. So this equation is a very familiar necking criteria, d sigma by d strain, which is greater than or equal to the plastic stress. So at other extreme, for Newtonian viscous flow, when there is without strain hardening, zeta is 0 and m therefore would be equal to or greater than. One can also see the stress distribution in necking. Usually this plot shows the stress equation where there is a complex triaxial state of stress in the necking region for this mild notch steel, and one can also calculate the stress average true stress at the necking point. This is much higher than the stress that would be required to cause the normal plastic flow due to stresses in the width and the thickness direction. So let us take one example to explain it. The stress strain curve, if it is taken as where the stress is this particular curve, which is again k, this is what the n value, so in megapascal. So let us find out the ultimate tensile strength of the material. So one can find out here that the n is 0.3, and if you use the true stress strain curve at the maximum load, so you can calculate it here by taking n as 0.03. So this becomes out to be 971 megapascal, and from the previous equation one can also find out other values, and therefore the ultimate tensile strength can be calculated as 698 megapascal. So one can see here how these equations are manipulated to get the different values. Generally tensile test is popular, but the notch tensile test is also carried out to evaluate notch sensitivity, that is the tendency for reduced tensile difficulty in the presence of a triaxial stress. Triaxial tensile stress, there is only one axis. When it is a triaxial, it is more than one direction, and a steep stress gradient occurs, and therefore the metallurgical or environmental changes also takes place. So under the notch tensile specimen, around 60-degree notch with a root radius of 0.025 mm is made, or less around this, around the circumferential notch is there, and or in case of it is a flat, that is the double edge notch also happens, and one can carry out in the same tensile test notch. This is called as notch tensile test. One can see this as the simulation where it gives the near the notch there is a very heavy stress distribution in the tensile test. Notch strength is also defined as the maximum load, which can be divided by the original cross sectional, and due to the constraint at the notch strength is higher than the tensile strength of the unnotched specimen. So this is calculated as for the notch specimen, with maximum load divided by the tensile strength for the unnotched specimen. This is the two ratio, it is called as notched strength ratio, NSR. If the NSR is less than 1, the metal is notched brittle. Generally it has been found out. The tensile properties of the steel for ferrous material or commercial other ferrous like steel and all that is commercially very important, and therefore it has also to be correlated with its microstructure and composition. So generally the tensile properties of annealed and normalized steels are controlled by flow and fracture characteristics of the ferrite which is present in the material, and its strength, alloying elements, grain size, all these things are concerned. The amount of ferrite, how much it is, the shape of the ferrite and the distribution, and the amount of the cementite and carbon content is also important as far as the properties of steels are concerned. This plot shows the properties of a steel with different microstructure. You can go in details when it is notched steel. One can see the higher strength than the annealed steel due to more rapid rate of cooling, which is resulting in pearlite formation. And this is another slide that shows the properties especially of the steel for different microstructure. For an example, if you deform it at different reduction, and its yield strength, tensile strength, elongation and reductions are, so one can see the strength of the annealed steel can be improved quite well under cold working condition. This is what's the microstructure of the steel, where the tensile property of a pearlite steel, it shows it can be best controlled by transforming the austenite to pearlite at the constant temperature on continuous cooling from above the critical temperature which is there. So transformation temperature, which is the spacing between the cementite and platelets. Here one can see in this plot where the strength increases. So this is what one can see for the different properties for at the quenching, and therefore there are two more properties concerned that is popular when a isotropic material where the material, the property everywhere is in all the direction is same. Anisotropy, if these properties particularly in all the directions are not same, then we call it is the anisotropy. It depends on the anisotropy, the level of anisotropy it is material, and that will affect the material, even the tensile test will be affected. So these things are also concerned, and rest of the workability and all those things we would be looking into next time, and or let us see what is workability as explained earlier also in the very first lecture. So what is workability? That it refers to, in a very crude manner, it's a relative ease with which a metal can be shaped through plastic deformation. Generally it is used in the place of formability also, workability or formability, which refers to the shaping of the sheet metal part. However, the workability is usually used for shaping of material by such bulk deformation processes like forging, extrusion and rolling and all that. So it's a characterization of mechanical behavior of material by tensile tests and then measuring the two different types of mechanical properties, particularly the strain property and ductility property. Similarly, the evaluation of workability involves both measurement of the resistance to deformation, that is the strength, and determination of the extent of possible plastic deformation before fracture, that is the that's the ductility. Therefore, a complete description of the workability of a material is specified by its flow stress depending on the processing variables such as strain rate, preheat temperature and the die temperature, etc. that you would be looking into in the second part of the course, which is technology of metal forming. But please note that all these processes are to be carried out before failure, and that's how failure behavior and the metallurgical transformation that characterizes the alloy, particular alloy system is also important with respect to the workability. Workability depends on local condition, as I told, the stress, strain and strain rate as well as temperature, and therefore one for the different alloy, usually a metallurgist sees that what is the workability, and therefore the different effect of strain rate, temperature separately as well as all together combining, it is observed how the material is going to behave before fracture, before failure. So that is test to carry out, which is very similar to tensile test under different these condition, stress, strain, temperature, we call it as the workability test. So these workability tests are very popular among metallurgists. So I thank you all for your patience, and I will again ask you to judge your learning through this e-content course and evaluate yourself to understand based on the objective question which is given. So one can take an answer and let us see the understanding. Please do not forget once again to give your feedback, and thank you very much.